to YouTube at the same time either. So,
hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Live with Love. I am Julie Roginsky, the co-founder of Lift Our Voices, here with my co-founder Gretchen Carlson. Good to see you, Gretchen.
Hey, well, darn, it says we're having trouble streaming to Instagram. Okay.
Well, that's okay. We'll stream
here. Yeah, that's okay. Well, I'm going to stream here, and I'm going to just a minute. I need to retweet the tweet.
Okay.
Got to take care of some business here. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So while you're retweeting the tweet, I don't know if people know this, but my friend Gretchen went down to Washington last week to testify in front of the Senate Committee on Aging about a really important piece of legislation that Lift Our Voices is hard at work to try to pass, the Protecting Older Americans Act. And what this law would do is expand our Ending Forced Arbitration for Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act to include protecting people who are 40 and over, which is, believe it or not, when age discrimination begins. So what this would do is ensure that if you've been the subject of age discrimination, you will no longer have to go to arbitration. You could bring your case in open court, which of course is a complete game changer for anybody who cares about protecting themselves at work as they get a little older. I just saw a study, Gretchen, recently that said that if you're over the age of 50 and you get fired from your job, it is almost impossible for you to get a new one, which is sad and scary at the same time. So, I have watched you testify on the Hill many times, but I've never done it. And I think most people, of course, listening have probably never done it. So what's it like?
So it's actually really intimidating when you do it the first time, obviously, because you're sitting there in front of senators or members of the House, and the most intimidating part is they don't all just come in and sit down at the meeting and listen to you, because senators and representatives are so busy and going in and out of different meetings, and so you can't take that as an offense if suddenly there are 2 people are in the room instead of 20. And then oftentimes they'll come in because how it works is you get 5 minutes to do your testimony as a witness, and then there's usually 2 or 3 other witnesses, and then each member of the Senate has 5 minutes to ask questions of the witnesses. So a lot of times the senators will just come in when they know it's their turn to be able to ask the questions as well, so that they get their questions in, and then they're heard, and then they may have to run off. I mean, usually the chair of the committee and the ranking member of the other party stay for the whole time, just out of respect to what they're doing. I mean, they're in leadership, so they should be staying. But it's a really good way to bring your particular issues, in this case, the Protecting Older Americans Act, to the forefront, because you can get press on it and people come and attend, and so it's a really good thing. This is the second time I've done it for this particular bill. Obviously, doing it before the Senate Committee on Aging is applicable, because we're talking about age discrimination and how people are being forced into secrecy through forced arbitration. It's a huge problem. Most people have no idea, as we've discussed a million times before, that they've signed something in their agreement that if they're discriminated against, they have to go to secret forced arbitration. People have no idea. So this would help people be able to make a choice, that they would have the ability to not be forced into secrecy.
It's interesting to me, I think, that this is the kind of bill that most of the time this kind of legislation gets heard in the Senate Committee on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, which is interesting because you've testified in front of that committee, I think last Congress, right? Is that when we went down there and you talked about it? And that committee, wow, God, time flies. That's crazy. That's been that long. But that actually passed the Judiciary Committee, and it passed. Did the Aging Committee actually vote? They voted on this too, right?
No, they don't vote. They are not a.
Yeah.
They don't have any kind of legislative power. So just not to get too much into the weeds, but all bills go to committees to live or die. The Judiciary Committee, where this one lives, has the ability to vote it out of committee, which means then it can go to the floor to be voted on to actually become law. The Senate Committee on Aging is simply a committee that discusses age issues, but they don't have voting power. But again, this was a good way to highlight the bill, and now it was reintroduced in the House and the Senate on the very same day, which is also powerful when it's done in both branches like that. And now it will go back to the Senate Judiciary Committee to be voted on again. That's called a markup, in case anyone wants to know what that is. I'm hoping that's going to happen in the next few weeks. Last time it was 15-4. So it was bipartisan, 15 Democrats, 4 Republicans, hoping to get more Republicans this time, and generate some.
Just to be clear, it's not that 15-4 was all 15 Democrats and only 4 Republicans on the committee. There are a lot of Republicans on the committee, including the committee chair, who voted for it last time, and hopefully this time as well. The committee chair at this time is Chuck Grassley, right? So I think,
and he's a sponsor of it.
He's a sponsor of the bill, so, which is great. And I think the other thing, in this very divisive time in our nation's history, and especially this week with everything that's going on, which we don't need to dwell on. I think everybody here knows what happened and just the devastating consequences of what happened. It's important to remember there is bipartisan stuff happening. It's just not covered that much because it doesn't get the clicks and it doesn't get the rage bait going. But the Ending Forced Arbitration for Sexual Assault and Sexual Harassment Act, that passed the Senate unanimously. I mean, they didn't even vote on it. They just got it out of the Senate. It passed the House with overwhelming bipartisan support. And the same for the Speak Out Act, which is our law to ban pre-dispute NDAs in 2022. That passed the Senate unanimously and also got overwhelming support, bipartisan support in the House, including from leadership. I want to be very clear. I mean, leadership of both parties voted for it. And same thing here. When you said 15-4, I mean, there was a sizable number of Republicans who joined all the Democrats in that committee to vote for it. People who don't typically vote together and work together. And the 2 laws that we passed last time around, those were sponsored by Kirsten Gillibrand and Lindsey Graham. They worked together on that. And Lindsey Graham was great. And so
Marsha Blackburn.
And Marsha Blackburn. So there's a lot to be said for what's happening in Washington that's out of the public eye, but that's good. I mean, that is good news. And the fact that we continue to see progress on legislation like this that would protect older Americans, and by older Americans, I want to stress again, anybody over 40. If you think about it, if you graduate college, you've got 18 years of not being discriminated against based on age, and then that's it. The most of your working life, assuming you work till you retire at 65 or 70, if you're lucky, you are in a position to be discriminated against. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Well, and by the way, almost every person in Congress is in that age category, so they should all be interested in this. I mean, let's not go down the rabbit hole of term limits, because I'm a huge advocate of term limits. But that could be for somebody who starts the job at 40, and that's a whole nother thing. That's not discrimination. That's just because we need new blood in there, because we all know that, we're seeing it happen right now. People are scared to speak their minds, most politicians, because they don't want to be voted out the next time by special interest groups, by whatever it is. And that's very, 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 very frustrating. So that's a separate discussion. But most people fit into this category of age discrimination. So basically, what does it mean? It means that if you are being discriminated against, you think that you can file a lawsuit. But the problem is that if you've signed a forced arbitration clause, which you had no idea about, you can't. That's what people don't understand. And so this bill will give you the opportunity to have choice with regard to that. And we would not recommend forced arbitration, because the deck is stacked against you. The company picks your arbitrator. They have a lot of cases. You have one. It's a secret chamber. Only 2% of the time does the employee actually win. And the bad actor, because it's secret, likely keeps their job and gets to keep roaming the hallways of the workplace, and you're out of a job. So we're big proponents of transparency and allowing people to have that choice and own their own voice. But just a little bit more on being bipartisan, Julia. I think, as we've been watching the developments over the last week, and I said this on CNN last night, it is just so overwhelmingly frustrating to me that in this country, we are dividing and giving power to the fringe. We are dividing and giving power to both sides that the majority of people do not find themselves in those categories. And I heard from so many people last night after I said that I'm exasperated with this, mainly because I have young adult children and this was a devastation for them as it was for so many people in this country. Most, should be all. And what do you tell them? What do you tell them? That they have their whole future in front of them. And you're going to tell them that it's just going to get worse? I mean, this is why we do this bipartisan work. And it ain't that tough. It really is not that tough to find things that we agree upon and come together and stop this nonsense. It just, you and I work in this space every single day. We've seen it happen. We know it can. And it's just incredibly frustrating that we give all this attention to the crazies. We just do. And I can say this because I'm a member of the media and I'm not doing my own show right now. And if I was, I would not be giving credit to the crazies. I would be covering the stories that are happening down the middle of, here are the people who are actually trying to bring good to our country, like the governor of Utah. All right, I'm off my soapbox now.
Well, okay. So this is a great question. What is your strategy for uniting such a divided group in Congress? It's not brain surgery, you guys. You just ask and you make your pitch. I mean, look, I think the problem is, and Gretchen, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know if anybody saw Gretchen on CNN yesterday and Anderson Cooper. My husband is a big cable news junkie. Gretchen, I don't even think you told me that you were going to be on, but it just so happened that I was in the room with him when he was watching CNN and I saw you and I was like, great. Of course I stopped and I watched. And you had this, you just described what you said, but it was, I urge people to see if they could go back and see it because it was really pretty fantastic.
I'll put it on my YouTube channel and my website.
But, to answer that question, what do you do to unite people? I think there is a perception among the right that people like Kirsten Gillibrand have to be awful because she represents New York, the People's Republic, and she's a crazy left-wing loon and yada, yada. None of which is true. There is a perception on the left, and I can say this as a, somebody who works on the left, that Lindsey Graham, because of things that he's done with Donald Trump and the positions that he's taken, is just a monster and you can't talk to him and you can't work with him. And the same goes for Marsha Blackburn and so on and so forth. And the reality is that is not true because these are people who truly, I mean, look, you may disagree with Kirsten Gillibrand ideologically, you may disagree with Lindsey Graham ideologically, but I truly believe that both of them are working in what they consider to be the best interest of their constituents. You may disagree with what their best interests are, but that's what they believe. And if you go to somebody like a Lindsey Graham and you say, Senator, there are people who are being discriminated against because they are not even old, they're older, and they are being replaced by cheaper, younger labor the minute they hit 40 or 50 or 60 because they are becoming more expensive since they obviously are moving up in the world. And you can get rid of them and replace them with 22-year-olds who don't know any better for 1/3 the pay. And that's not fair. And when you say that, senators say, you know what? Let me look into that on both sides of the aisle. And they do the right thing a lot of times. And I think you have to give credit to people when they do. And you have to go in there, from my perspective, assuming that they have the best of intentions and not try to manipulate them, but just try to explain the problem to them. These guys aren't stupid. They understand what the crisis is for their constituents. And if they think it's in the best interest of their constituents, they will do the right thing.
Yeah. All that to say that it's not like it's just an easy chess game that you walk in and you're like, hey, we got Republicans and Democrats together today. I mean, this took, for the first bill, it took us more than 5 years to get even just 10 Republicans to vote in the Senate on this. So we're making it sound easy. But what I guess our point is that if you don't try, you won't know. And if you're just going to have, as Julie just explained, this automatic hatred from the beginning. By the way, Kirsten Gillibrand was a Republican before she was a Democrat. So that case in point right there shows that, she's probably more moderate as she's lived on both sides of the equation. Anyway, There is, people say to us all the time, Julie, how do you get stuff done, and how do you continue to have hope and all? Because we've done it and because we believe in it. And if you don't act on it, then it's not going to happen. You have to keep waking up every morning and saying, I am going to work on bringing people together to get something done for the good of the country. We're seeing that with the governor of Utah. He's being maligned. I don't even care what party he's in. He's just speaking the right messaging right now. And he's being crucified because he's having the audacity to say that we should try to come together. And by the way, this is what I would have said if I had more time last night. A good leader is one that does that. A good leader is one that doesn't just have yes man or women. They have people who say to them, ma'am or sir, you actually should look at this from this perspective. And if you don't have that, you're not a good leader, because you're only hearing what you want to hear. And that's exactly what's wrong with our country, because we're only watching and reading what we want to hear. But you also have to have courage as a leader to step outside of the box and say, you know what? We do have to figure out a way to work together. We do have to not malign people because they have different beliefs. I just don't understand. Maybe this is a woman thing that women tend to want to compromise more than men. We see things in a circle. Men apparently see things more in a totem pole, and I don't know. But I just believe the majority of the country is seeing what we're talking about right now, and they're all just sitting back with their head in their hands and going, "What the F is going on?" That's just what I think is happening. And they're not. I think why it resonated last night is because they just continue to hear the hate. We continue to promulgate, well, this is what the far left said, and here's what the far right said. And instead of just trying to, I'm not being naive enough to think too that you need to get clicks. That's part of the problem too. Well, if you talk more incendiary, you'll get more clips. This is not where the majority of Americans are. They are exasperated, they are frustrated, they want to come together, and they want to try to heal. Sorry.
So, great question from Insta again. What would the message be to voters if their lawmakers in DC let the Epstein issue slip by with all the news? What would that say to survivors about their representatives? It's a disgrace. There's no excuse for it. I mean, listen, I'm not suggesting that people who are working with us on our issues and doing a good job there are necessarily doing a good job by other things that we care about. There's no excuse.
Exactly.
If you did not vote to release the Epstein files, shame on you. And I hope there's accountability for you down the road, because these are survivors who are denied and have been denied justice for decades. And I will say, Gretchen, I've said it before, I can't speak for them, but I can speak for myself. I've never been sexually assaulted, but I certainly was allegedly sexually harassed. I have to say allegedly because that's part of my settlement. That the harassment is bad. The retaliation afterwards is worse. And I'll just say that for myself. And I don't know about these survivors, but whatever happened to them, what is happening to them now has got to be in the pantheon of awfulness that has ever happened to them as human beings. I mean, these are women who grew up as children with this hanging over their heads, and their entire adult life and part of their childhood has been scarred by this incredibly awful thing that has been hanging over them, and I'm sure on a daily basis, their entire life. And the fact that there are members of Congress who are putting their own careers and their fear of Donald Trump ahead of the survivors is inexcusable. I will also say that, Gretchen, right before we came on air, Kash Patel, was the director of the FBI, was testifying in front of Congress or the Senate, and he was asked about the Epstein files, and he seemed to blame the whole thing on Alex Acosta and said that the original sin was Alex Acosta cutting that deal to shield Epstein. He's right about that. But Alex Acosta did not do that for himself. Alex Acosta did that for somebody else, or maybe somebody's plural. And we need to know who those somebodies are. But
that's why Kash Patel is first of all, I don't think he's qualified for the FBI job. So this would not be I wouldn't be crying any crocodile tears if he's not the person in charge anymore. But the reason he's not going to be the person in charge, besides ineptness, is because he's the one that was pushing the Epstein file story. And Pam Bondi was trying to get rid of it, as was Dan Bongino, who's his second lieutenant. By the way, both those guys ain't going to be around, in my estimation, too long, because the guy from, where is it, Missouri or Kentucky that they brought in, he's going to be taking
90 days.
What?
The law says,
he wouldn't be coming in for some second string job. Let me just say that. So, but back to the Epstein situation that we had on the Hill 2 weeks ago, when I happened to be testifying, what we started this conversation about, before the Senate Committee on Aging, at the exact same time that the Epstein survivors were on the steps of the Capitol telling their stories and pleading with members of Congress to take their account more seriously and ask for these files to be released. But that was a show of amazing bipartisanship in the most crazy of ways. You had Ro Khanna, who is a Democrat from California, on the steps with Tom Massey.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, went into wherever she was inside the Capitol and put up the drawing that allegedly Donald Trump made of the, statuesque body of the woman, and said it's his signature. Now, that takes nuts, because we've seen what happens to people who speak out of school if they're a Republican in the Republican Party with Donald Trump. But that was a show. I don't probably agree with anything else Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, but that showed that people can come together if they have nuts. And the problem is, most politicians don't have nuts. They just don't. They're worried about their, being primaried out. They're worried about their next election, which again brings me back to where there should be term limits, because they might actually act with conviction. We always see people who are retiring suddenly vote their minds. Wow. That would happen if we had term limits. We would be better served as constituents if we had term limits, because people would actually use their own conviction. It just drives me crazy. One of my biggest pet peeves in my life is conviction and sticking to it. And my second one is when you go out to dinner and you order a glass of wine and they only give you a tiny pour. But more importantly in life, it's conviction and standing by it. And our politicians just don't do it. But we want to point out the glimmers of hope, because we did see that. And we had Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace voting for the release. So this story is not going to go away, folks. We're going to continue to talk about it. There's just, there's other really, really, really serious things happening in our society right now as well. But we tend to wake up, Julie, in the morning seeing the glass half full, because we have to in the line of work that we do, but also just because that's the only way we're going to survive.
Yeah.
All right, another question. Did you have to overcome stereotypes from working at Fox when talking to certain lawmakers in Congress? It's a loaded question.
It actually helps.
You know what happened? It actually, gosh, you could have never ever predicted this, but it actually increased my fan base a little bit, because suddenly Democrats were respectful of what I did, and knew that I was becoming an advocate to try and bring people together and to try and make change with a lot of things they had been working on for years and years and years. And then at the same time, I still had probably some respect from some Republicans because I had worked at Fox. So it was kind of this perfect storm of trying to bring people together. And just for the record, I've been a registered independent my whole life. So that's where I sit. And so maybe I am the perfect person to try to bring people together on this. And my story at Fox actually was sort of the reason about how this all came to be, that what I've thought about in the back of my mind my whole life is, why can't we come together, started to play out.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, this has been great. You guys, thank you so much. We have an incredible amount of people here in the chat, and also I know on YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn. So thank you to everybody for joining us. We will be back here. I don't know that we're going to be back here next week, Gretchen, because I think you're away, right?
I think I can make it next week, and then
okay.
and then not after that. Yeah. So okay. I'll look for. I'm sure something crazy is going to happen, and hopefully something good.
Yeah, well, we'll try to find the good in stuff happening for next week as well. Thank you to everybody, and we will see you really soon. Bye.